is about developing countries' participation in global IG, but we will really focus on ICANN and in particular example of the generic name supporting organization. So my name is Rafik Damak. I am the chair of the non-commercial stakeholder group within ICANN. And we got several panelists today trying to have some diversity in terms of geographical diversity, gender diversity, but mostly about also the background and the experience regarding the participation and the issue for developing countries to be involved in policy making process. So maybe, as I explained, the title can be misleading somehow. However, it's really if you read the description of the workshop, we want to focus and to talk in more concrete way about what kind of issue faced by developing countries in terms of participation. And we took the example of the generic name or GTLD because there was a lot of discussion when the new GTLD programming was launched in 2011. So we will start with a really quick introduction of our panelists. So we will have like 3 to 5 minutes for each panelist to introduce quickly themselves and to kind of make a brief statement. And we will start from my right with Baher Asmat. Hi Baher, please.
Thank you, Rafi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Baher Asmat. I'm with ICANN. I manage the ICANN stakeholder relationships in the Middle East. And I happen to be speaking first in this session. So just looking at the title of the discussion today, participation from developing countries in IG in general, maybe in more specifically ICANN, maybe more specifically GNSO. I'd like perhaps to begin by addressing the issue of participation and just to highlight quickly that there are different levels of participation and perhaps different means of participation, and working in one developing region like the Middle East, we've been dealing with some of the challenges that are facing community in the Middle East in the different levels. And when I say different levels, I mean we can talk about the level of a participatory process where everyone can participate, and this is a model that is not very common in the Middle East at national or regional level. So if you take it to the international level, it becomes more challenging for community in the region to become effective component of that global thing. Another level is if you look at specific functions, specific roles that different organizations play, like ICANN and others, then you have to look for what is the stake for community in the country or the region to participate in this process. What is in it for them? So because this is an introductory part, I'm not going to delve into details, but basically what we're trying to do as staff who engages constantly with community, we try to first take the issues to them rather than inviting them to come and participate in the issues. We do a lot of education, we do a lot of awareness building to explain the general concepts of internet governance, why are they important, why stakeholders should participate, and so forth. We try to encourage and support regional and national fora like regional and national IGFs and others for people to participate in. And then depending on the specific stakeholder group, we work with them on addressing specific issues. So just to give you one quick example, a few years ago when ICANN was working on the process to introduce internationalized domain names. These are domain names in different languages. This was a very dear topic to community in the Middle East and part of Asia. Because simply they use languages other than the Latin or the English language and scripts other than the Latin script. So in this particular topic, there was much more interest compared to other topics for community in the Middle East to come and participate, and they took part in different working groups and different processes within ICANN, including some of the GNSO working groups as well. So this is another level to address the specific issues. And then after going to them and try to engage with them, we, not after, but actually maybe along with that, we also encourage them to come to ICANN through different programs like fellowship and others, and to participate effectively in ICANN. And we make it clear to them, or I personally, at least talking about myself, I think that participation in ICANN is not an easy task for newcomers. So I tell them, well, I mean, you will come for one meeting, a second meeting, a third meeting. I mean, you should be okay if you feel that you still cannot engage. That's the process. And, you know, so through sharing information, through encouraging them to maybe commenting on some of the activities that are relevant to them, they come to they become more engaged. And we've seen some examples from the Middle East of individuals and organizations who have become over years more engaged and more actively participating in ICANN. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Behr. I mean, okay, it's good to talk about the Middle East. So we are now starting to go through region by region, and I think we will go with Sintra. I guess you will talk more about small islands and the Caribbean example. Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you, Rafiq. I'm also from the Latin America region, so I hope that my perspective can also build on that experience. I'm the immediate past vice chair of the not-for-profit operational concerns of ICANN, and as well as the chair of the Internet Society Trinidad and Tobago chapter. So my perspective will be grounded in that background. The developing country presence in the global internet governance takes many forms, one critical area being DNS policy creation and the build-out of the DNS industry with add-on services. IG organizations have been pushing in the direction of outreach to increase participation and representation from the developing world. However, participation and representation benchmarks are no longer the only suitable measure of success of these initiatives. Developing country representatives, with the support of IG organizations, must be able to facilitate the stable and secure growth of Internet and the DNS industry in their countries. For the DNS, the new benchmarks must be specific targets on the growth of the industry, registrations, new GTLDs, accredited registrars and registries. IG organizations need to transition to encourage this growth. Within ICANN, developing countries are still a minority voice, and mechanisms to support their representatives compete with what are often considered higher priorities. There is a sacrifice of time, cost, and energy to be present at these meetings. It is difficult to be representative and to engage in policy creation. For now, there is little knowledge of the capitalization of IG issues to recruit the best talent and to bring all developing country representatives on board. For instance, in the last round of new GTLDs, the application fee was still too high for many developing world applicants to take advantage of the applicant support program provided by ICANN. This demonstrates that even such a well-intentioned program was simply out of touch with reality. This year, the UN focuses on small island developing state issues, And one positive sign is that ICANN has initiated meetings with representatives. It is hoped that the mechanisms employed shall systematically include these 51 countries in its multi-stakeholder policy development process and DNS development agenda. By supporting such cross-geographic communities of interest, ICANN is attempting to act as a facilitator to bring synergies and proficiency to encourage participation in the GNSO process. However, this initiative must be complemented with other programs to get representatives of developing countries in the door. There has been an investment by the community in order to create this growth. There has to be an investment by the community in order to create this growth and to create equity so that we can all fill this room. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Intra. I think you will just maybe to give the context to people. So you talked about the example of the new GTLD support applicant working group, which was kind of main cross-community effort to help applicants from developing countries to apply for strings and to join that process. I mean, the result was mixed, but we can talk about this later. And we will move to Africa with Frame. So just please present yourself and to give us your perspective about the participation in GNSO, in particular since you are kind of maybe newcomer and you joined ICANN meetings as a fellow, so you can give us kind of different perspective.
Hi, I'm Ephraim Kenyanito from Kenya, and great to be here. Okay, it's great that you're talking about developing countries' participation in global internet governance, and more specifically the GNSO process. And she just said most of the points that I wanted to say, but then I'd like to talk about the multilingualization of the internet. It's good that we should start thinking about this more proactively, ensuring that countries and all stakeholders continue in this process so that we can continue preserving the language and the culture of various stakeholders, of people from Africa and other developing countries, so that they can come on board. The people who the global digital divide can be reduced. And then something that will be of concern to the African continent is the .africa domain. As she pointed out about the process of new GTLDs, you find that ICANN, not just ICANN, the internet governance community should support this initiative and ensure that the domain Africa can have the .africa domain very, very fast, so that these delays can be dealt with very fast. Then, as she pointed out about resources, time, getting into this space, internet governance space, from developing countries, it's good that the community is investing. There's the ISOC program that brings people from developing countries. There's the ICANN fellowship. Freedom House also did something similar. So it's good that different stakeholders, civil society, business, organizations such as ICANN, ISOC are thinking about this, about developing countries and more so Africa. And we need to support such initiatives. And then something in order to enhance that, people to understand. You cannot just say you want to bring people to attend something, but also to participate in the policy making processes. You need people to understand this. So supporting initiatives in the various regions, such as the Latin America, there's a summer school on internet governance, there's an African summer school on internet governance. Supporting such kind of initiatives, like this community, ICANN, and Bill Drake was in South Africa last year to talk to the Africans about internet governance and teaching people about all this. So it's good that we are doing that, and we just need to enhance these efforts. Yeah, basically that's it, and I'll be happy to discuss more. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Frame. Now moving to Asia, and so Okitanis. Okay, for someone living in Japan, I'm mispronouncing your name, Okotani-san. So please introduce yourself and give us I think you will give us a perspective mostly from RIR, but also in the participation in GNSO, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Izumi Okutani, and I am a member of the ISPCP within the GNSO, and I'm also actively engaged in the community within the Asia Pacific region, where forums called APNIC, Apricot, where a lot of the technical operators within the region participate, including many from the developing countries. So I would like to give my perspective within the Asia Pacific, and especially focusing on the perspectives from the technical community. So within the ISPCP of the GNSO, active participation from developing countries is very, very limited. So regional balance is relatively good compared to other groups. But we don't have anybody actively participating from Africa, and within the Asia Pacific, nobody from developing countries actively giving inputs. So why is this? So when I look into the other forum that I'm participating, the APNIC forum, I think most people are not putting so much attention or have interest in getting involved in the ICANN process in the first place. So their priority is more like, so how can we build the network within my country, or how can I get expertise to do this? And so those are more within their priorities than getting involved in developing policies for domain names. On the other hand, it doesn't mean that there are no policies getting developed that affects technical communities within the Asia Pacific. So issues such as the name collisions as a result of the new GTLDs, review of the GTLD whois, or IDN, where Beher has mentioned, or, well, this is not directly within the GNSO process, but DNSSEC workshops that are being organized within the ICANN meetings. That's very helpful in sharing technologies that's necessary for developing countries to learn things. So, but many people don't know about these details of information being shared, and they just think, oh, ICANN is some place that has to do with the domain names, but they don't feel that it's something that affects them. So it's pretty important that we share with these people that there are things that are being discussed that affects them. Plus, many people don't know that participation is open as well. So this is maybe something that we can also share in addition. So what I am quite happy to see was the ICANN's Asia Pacific Hub actually participated in this conference that happened this year within the Asia Pacific region to share the latest policies within the ICANN. So I think it really helped a lot in making people understand, okay, what are the policies that are being discussed, and so how does it affect them? And at this stage, I think people just like more into hearing what's going on rather than building their own opinions and giving feedbacks. But that would at least be a start, because they have to know what's going on to be able to make their choice, whether this is something of their interest to participate or not. And so I think it's very important that not just within the Asia Pacific region, not just within the technical community, but with other topics. Maybe for business people, they have interest more on what's being developed in terms of new GTLD applications, or maybe trademark protections. People want to know about the policies within the ICANN related to this. So I think it would be good to develop more outreach, awareness raising programs per interest of stakeholder groups, and also, I think it's quite difficult for everybody within from the developing countries to physically participate as well. So I think we want to think about what are the alternative options rather than just providing fellowships. So some of the things that we may be able to think of is maybe more actively provide remote hubs, or maybe develop a leadership program on GNSO policies, which is something that Asia Pacific region is already doing on internet governance, and then maybe like have educate and have coordinator who can represent opinions within a certain region or within the economy, and then those people can come to the ICANN, and that can maybe those people can raise and share the issues within their context to the ICANN community. I think there's a couple of options, and I would be interested to have discussion later on this topic, because I believe there are some questions about this.
Thanks, Kotani-san. So now back to Latin America with Olga Cavalli. I think you will give us kind of different perspective, since you participated in GNSO Council and also you are a GAC member, so it's quite, I think, unusual experience, and we want to know also more about Latin America participation in GNSO policies, please.
Thank you, Rafiq. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the invitation. Yes, my perspective is it's diverse. I am now the Argentina representative in the GAC. I was the Argentina representative before joining the GNSO. Then I joined the GNSO as a non-com appointee for one term, and then I was reappointed for another term, so I was there for 4 years. I can tell you that that was one of the most interesting learning experience in really, and Chuck is laughing, I learned so much from you, from Bill, and from many other colleagues. I just remember in this moment one anecdote. I wanted to apply for non-com, and I've met my friend Tony Harris. He was at the non-com at that time, and he said, well, you should apply for CCNSO or ALAC. I said, no, I want the GNSO. And he said, why? Because this is where real things happen in ICANN. I said, this is the big players are there, big decisions are made there, and I want to learn. And he said, it's a lot of work, it's extremely complicated. And I said, well, I want to do it. And honestly, it has been a fantastic experience, learning experience for me. Language, I do speak English, but I can tell you that my first telephone calls were, I suffered a little bit because the English was very in between native speakers, and so my English now is much better after the GNSO. That was one unexpected outcome. But I learned so much about the whole ecosystem, about ICANN, about the different companies, about different colleagues that participate, and the different level of involvement of countries, regions, and about the whole ecosystem. And focusing in Latin America and thinking about the participation of Latin America, which is usually not that as much as we expect, I think that Latin America has a lack of more development in parts of the ICANN, of the internet ecosystem. For example, we have few or no registries in the region. We have the CCTLDs. We had very few applications from companies from the region for new GTLDs. I think there were a little bit more than 20, much less than developing regions. We don't have many registrars. I think we have around 10 registrars, ICANN registered, accredited registrars in the whole Latin American region, which is quite big, and there are big countries. There are several explanations for that, but I won't go into that because that's another topic. But the fact that the registries and registrars are not around so much as in other regions makes that the interest of the local companies and the local people and professionals involved in the internet ecosystem is not so much into critical internet resources issues, which are the main things that are reviewed in the GNSO and in ICANN. Also, the registrars gather other services that are important as a value chain towards the user. They usually sell hosting and security services and other things, web pages. So this part of the industry it's not so well developed. At the same time, it's a business opportunity for companies that want to do that, because the region is very big. If you compare how many registered domains are in Latin America in the CCTLDs, which are the most of the domains registered, maybe more than 10 million. So if you think that only Germany has more than 50 million, or .org has more than 10 million, or .com has more than hundreds. It's really a very low number of domain names registered. So the whole region is a big opportunity, but at the same time, it shows that it's part of the ecosystem. It's not so much developed or established. At the same time, those that know me, you know that I've been working hard to bring more people from our region into this process. Me and other colleagues, we organized since 2009 the South School of Internet Governance. We have trained so far more than 600 professionals. All have received fellowship, all of them. I am pleased to share this room with Bill, Olga. Also, ICANN has helped with our school, and this year we organized it in the Caribbean for the first time. Sintra was there with us, and it has been a great experience, and it has gone well. Many of the students are now pretty much involved in the ecosystem, but still we need more representatives. I was really surprised with the number of applications to the non-com this year. Latin America had really very, very, very few of them. So I will stop here, and I'm happy to comment later. Thank you.
Thanks, Olga. Okay, just to make a point, maybe we tend to use some acronyms familiar to those attending ICANN meetings, but if you have any question, you want clarification, please feel free to ask. I mean, we don't want to to look like it's an insider talk. We want really to explain to people what is happening, and if you have any question to want clarification, if you hear acronym that you couldn't make sense, just please ask. And we are moving now to Bill Drake. I think he will give us quite different perspective, maybe more from a stakeholder group experience, but also maybe as with his, with his experience with many from developing countries. So, Bill, it's up to you now.
Good afternoon, everyone. I was wondering how you would try to explain since you were associating people's perspectives with their localities, I was wondering how you're going to do it for me. So a developing country perspective from Chicago. Yes, why not? Exactly. I actually have a long-standing interest in development issues and in engaging developing countries in internet governance processes here at the IGF, ICANN, and everywhere else, so that's perfectly fine. This workshop is actually parallel to one that we did last year that I organized, which was on civil society and its role in ICANN's multi-stakeholder model, and looking in particular at the experience of the GNSO. And now we're looking at the question of developing country participation and issues in the same context. And why do that at an IGF meeting? And the answer is precisely coming to something that Rafiq just said when he was worrying about acronyms. It's very easy for people from the ICANN universe, or planet ICANN, depending on your perspective, to go into fairly insular kinds of discussions amongst themselves. And what is, I think, really important is to broaden the discussion by engaging people who don't necessarily participate in the ICANN space, and to draw connections between what goes on in ICANN and other internet governance environments, and to look at similarities, differences, lessons learned, things like that. I think it's important that ICANN has been working to try to increase its sensitivity to and responsiveness to the concerns of what I would call non-dominant actors in global internet governance. And that is a long and difficult process, and not one that necessarily comes immediately for everybody. By way of comparison, in the Internet Governance Forum, I spent 4 years organizing annual workshops on the notion of institutionalizing a development agenda for internet governance, or IG4D as I called it. And Olga was on many of those workshops, and Rafik as well. And this eventually led to us having main sessions on IG4D after some years, because we kept beating on the table and saying we need to talk about how you build development as a concern, as a framing kind of set of metrics into evaluations of internet governance processes. And in the IGF context, finally people became fairly responsive to that view that this is something worth doing. When I entered ICANN, in contrast, I was served on the GNSO Council, the Generic Name Supporting Organization Council, as a civil society representative from 2009 to 2012. And I now chair a constituency that participates in the council. I had a little bit different experience. I'll give you 2 examples. 2 of my first meetings I went as a GNSO counselor, first in Nairobi in 2009. There was a event that was supposed to encourage developing country participation in ICANN. And I was asked to come and make some comments on it because of things I was doing. So I show up in the room and I look around, and there's 50 usual suspects. I mean, I'm sorry to say, 45 of them were Caucasian, and there were 2 Africans in the room. And I went over afterwards and I asked one of the gentlemen there, I said, well, why do you think the turnout from Africa is so low in this? And he says, well, first of all, if you look at the agenda, you've got this massive Excel page file, and there's a little box that says public particip. And that's this session. So somebody's supposed to scan this and figure out that this is where the discussion of developing country outreach is going to happen. Okay? Now, I think ICANN has gotten better at this over time because we've raised the issues. Olga organized a whole initiative when we served on council together to try to create an outreach task force that would involve the community. Subsequently, under the current president and CEO, a number of staff have been hired to try to do outreach. They've built up a whole program with regional vice presidents and so on. So there's now a lot more effort, I think, to try to promote that kind of engagement, but it took a lot of pounding on the table and raising consciousness and saying, hey, this is a priority, the community thinks this is important. There's still much more work that needs to be done. We fly into a lot of these places and we don't really engage the communities there as much as we should. I'm now organizing civil society events with support from the staff in different places that we go to try to reach out to local people. But it's outreach is hard. It's hard for volunteers to do the work, but it's an incremental process. And the important point is, even though at the beginning there was almost no sensitivity to the problem, once people raised the concern, my feeling is that the leadership and the people involved in ICANN said, yes, you're right, let's take this on board and try and do it. A second example, and then I'll stop, was that at another one of my early meetings in ICANN in Mexico City. This was when they were developing the new GTLD program to create all the new top-level domain spaces. And the staff member who was in charge of guiding this effort came in to explain to us what they were doing, and the model was that people would put up $185,000 to apply for a new GTLD. And myself and Rafik and another colleague from civil society all raised our hand and said, that's a bit expensive for people coming from perhaps developing country, NGO spaces or things like that who might want to do this. Have you given any thought to trying to have a more differentiated price structure or supports or something like that? And they said, oh, it's too complex. But then we found out later on that colleagues from other parts of the ICANN community, the at-large community, the government advisory committee, were also expressing concerns. And over time, we were able to put together a working group, which Rafiq co-chaired, which put forward a model for trying to figure out how to provide support to applicants from developing countries. And in the end, we put in place a mechanism. Now, it was not well implemented, and we didn't get as many applications as one would like, and so hopefully we learn from that experience now. But the point I'm making is, in both these cases, what started out as a situation where there wasn't sensitivity to the issues because of the kinds of folks who were involved and what their experiences were, when we began to press and really say, look, we need to be more aware of developing country issues and participation, people listened and people adjusted. And so that is, I think, the sign of a learning organization, and I think that kind of flexible approach has to be taken more generally across internet governance institutions. And I'll stop there.
Okay, it sounds that we are listening to another workshop here, but anyway, so after this kind of presentation, I think maybe we can get questions from the audience if they want to ask or to clarify something. I encourage you to ask. Don't be shy and come. So, who want to volunteer first? Marilia? Yes, I like volunteering people. It's really so funny. Mike, please. Mike. We don't have mic. Yeah,
The microphone is, yes. Can we give it to her, please?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rafiq, for volunteering me. Thank you for chairing the session and Bill for pushing the topic over the years, not only here, but in ICANN as well. It's valuable, so thank you very much. My question is related to the policy development process, and to which extent do you believe that your efforts and the efforts of others to insert developing countries' concerns have been successful or heard or have presented practical results? I remember that a few years ago when someone from ICANN was talking about the new GTLD program on our main session, I raised the question about what practical, concrete things were being made, or which efforts were being made to enforce the appliances from registries from developing countries, or to make sure that actors in developing countries were aware in terms of, is there a price differentiation, is there some kind of incentives or something like that, and if they had measured the impact of new GTLDs on the market in developing countries. And to my surprise, there was nothing being planned for that, and no idea of this kind of impact. So I would like to know from you, what is the assessment that you have regarding policies and inclusion of developing countries' views? Well, anyone who wants to chime in. I was looking at you both because I know that you have ideas about that, but...
Okay, I can answer. That's not easy question, I guess. So, Bill and Olga, you want to respond?
Yes, I can tell you my experience about this new GTLD process. I promoted, me and other colleagues in Argentina, an event we did it in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs where I work. It was very nice, about new GTLDs in 2009. Then I have been explaining the concept of what is a TLD, what is a new GTLD, about, I don't know, 10, 20 people, government officials, private sector, academic. I've been writing papers in the university. I have prepared lectures about new GTLDs at the university, in other universities, in every event that I have been participating in. And the concept of a new GTLD is extremely complex to explain and for the audience to capture, or I am not good in explaining it, maybe, or maybe both, I don't know. But So as you said, that the applications from Latin America were very few. I don't think it's exactly because of the price of the application, because there are some cities that could have applied for a city TLD that have the money. I mean, for a city like Buenos Aires or Sao Paulo or Rio, it's not that much money. Maybe for a small and medium enterprise, it is a lot of money, but for such a big city, I don't think that's an issue. The issue is the purpose. Why should I? What is the need for? And sometimes you can explain it 10 times, but it is not enough. What I see now is that people is starting to understand that there are city TLDs, for example, that they exist. And we have a say in Spanish, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Lo que no te mata te fortalece. What happened with some GTLDs about some regional names, like Patagonia or Amazon, has been at least bringing awareness to the whole society about that. And also, it brought many countries, more countries from the region to the GAC, which has been, for the region, better. So I will stop here, but I would say it's because I think some parts of this ecosystem are not so strong in Latin America, so it's difficult to explain and to explain why a new GTLD is needed, why you have to pay so much money, why most of the information is in English, and why all this process is happening in other regions of the world. I will stop here.
Measuring impact is always a difficult thing, right? Now, if your metric is have a great deal of developing country actors come in on the supply side of the market to become registries or registrars for GTLDs, the answer would be no, not so much. And as Olga says, there may be a number of reasons for that are not clearly just a function of the program, but are also a matter of local market demand, whatever. Bear in mind also, in many developing countries, the CC, the country code top-level domain, is really the main focus for a lot of people, and that's where the action is. But there's two sides to the story. Encouraging participants in the supply side would be great, and if there's any identifiable friction that exists in the system that precludes greater participation because of the way the institutional rules are designed and so on, then we should definitely focus on those and remove those. But then the other side of the story is on the demand side, the users of GTLDs and everything else. That's a different story. The impact of the internet and the use of domain names impacts across the commercial and non-commercial world. And that's true for the developing countries as much as it is for developing countries. And so it would be useful, I think, to try to really encourage greater engagement as well in the business constituencies that make up the user side of the market, the intellectual property interests, the other business groups, the internet service providers, as well as civil society, so that impacts upon their operations of these policies could be built into their activities more effectively. I don't think we've done enough to do that. NCUC, NCSG, we have a lot of civil society members from developing countries, but they're not always as engaged as some others. You're one of the more engaged ones. So there's more that could be done there, obviously, on both sides of the equation to try to encourage. But I mean, if you hold up development impacts as a metric to begin to analyze ICANN policies so that people become more aware of the possible linkages between the ways in which we do registry, registrar, accreditation and regulation and so on, and possible development impacts and other types of issues, that would probably be useful. The last thing to say is, bear in mind the GNSO is not necessarily the main space right now in ICANN where these kinds of issues come up. The Government Advisory Committee has increasing engagement from developing countries, governments, and they have raised a number of their issues in many contexts and made that part of the dialogue. And the CCNSO, where the country code players are, also developing countries are quite active there. So we see developing country issues and developing country participation slowly growing across the space, but it's not a big bang by any stretch of the imagination.
Thanks, Bill. So let's try to get more questions. Okay, Olga?
Yeah. The mic?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Tarek. My question relates to, we understand the nature of the problem. It unfortunately is a part of our human dilemma globally. How do we incorporate the developing countries into what we're trying to do within our ICANN space? Let's talk about what we're doing today and take its temperature. Is it working? Do we need to tweak it? Is there something about it that's not working at all? And by that, I mean the regional strategies. By one major measure, how are the regional strategies beginning to impact or not this problem? And the second tool is, of course, ably represented by Bahir in terms of the global outreach efforts. So that's our current toolkit. Is it working?
Thank you. So as Bill said, measuring impact is not always easy, but there are efforts in different directions to aiming towards improving participation from developing countries. Some efforts relate to regional strategies in the various regions. They just started a couple of years ago in Africa and then followed in Middle East, Latin America, and Asia Pacific. In the Middle East, we've started to sort of witness some impact. We've started to see more participation in terms of quantity, new faces coming to ICANN. But again, I'd have to be very candid and say those who come to ICANN for the first or second time are not the active participants. They still, attend sessions, try to grasp information, comprehend knowledge and all this, but it takes time for them to become active participants and make the impact that we're looking for. But regional strategies is not the only effort. We have different programs. Some of them are entirely led by community members, like one, and I'm sorry, I'm going to use an acronym and I need help, the CROP program. This is the kind of program that community, so it's a community program that allows community members to go and represent ICANN in different meetings and talk about ICANN and promote what ICANN does and encourage more participation in ICANN. This program has been in play for the past year, I think, and this sort of complements the fellowship program that brings people to ICANN. So that's another effort. We have a newly born initiative, and I think it was born in Asia recently, called the Next Generation, ICANN Next Generation program. Again, the main goal is to bring new comers to ICANN, and I guess at the Singapore meeting and then the London meeting we had some participants, and we'll continue to do that. On the business side in particular, we also have a business engagement plan, trying to engage with businesses from different regions. So at each and every meeting since maybe the Beijing meeting in 2013, we have started to see focused and dedicated business engagement sessions like business breakfast or some sort of activity with business, and mainly new business, again, to try to encourage them to become part of the business constituency or the different business related activities at ICANN. So different initiatives and activities are underway. Still the question is to try to measure the impact. Of course, under each and every effort or initiative or strategy, like the regional strategy, for instance, we have KPIs. We have specific KPIs that measure some details, even to the level of how many public comments came from the Middle East on a particular policy development process. So we're trying to track that and to measure that as well.
I think, yes. Okay, just one. Okay. Yeah, I think you talked a lot about participation, but I think one of what's missing is also is engagement, but how real, I mean, the participation in the policy process, not just coming to the meeting and so on. So, but we can develop later. Okunani-san, please go ahead.
Izumi. So I am quite engaged with the ICANN's Asia Pacific hub, and how do we reach out to people within our community. And I also do coordination in raising voices, well, not developing country, but Japan to the Asia Pacific region in terms of IP address forum. So I would like to share some examples based on my experience. And I do very much agree with Bahar that participation within the ICANN is not easy. If you just suddenly join, the minority, it's very difficult to form your opinion or be heard effectively. And what I feel is very helpful is, first, if you're able to have discussions and consider within your local community, in your own language, and what is relevant within your local environment, and then have discussions among the other fellow people who are experiencing similar situation, and then that will help you form opinions gradually. So I think it would really help if the ICANN actually can facilitate in engaging much more locally outside of the ICANN first. And then, as the voices within each of these local communities increase, they can bring the voices back to the ICANN meeting, global ICANN meetings. And but I think Bill has raised the issue of it's quite difficult to also encourage participation when we go out to those countries and get people to get interested in the ICANN. But I think there are existing communities within each economies, countries, and they specialize on certain groups. For example, in terms of business, they may have Chamber of Commerce, they may have operational communities where people discuss about operational issues, or they may maybe have groups of lawyers that discusses about intellectual property right issues. So I think ICANN can reach to each of these different groups of people, which maybe can be equivalent to stakeholder groups within the ICANN, and then share the topics that's relevant to each of these stakeholder groups. So for business people, maybe something related to the GTLD applications, business impact. The lawyers, maybe the rights protection laws. For technical communities, something that's more technically oriented within the ICANN. And by building these communications in each of these local local communities, I think people will start to have more voices and opinions that can be shared within the global ICANN community. So what can we, once how can we connect those local voices to the global ICANN meeting? That's one thing I'm kind of interested to discuss here with you today. One of the things maybe remote hub, one of the things maybe have someone representing the opinions, I don't know. And I think there are a possible couple of options that we can maybe consider.
Yes, we have a queue, and I'm happy with that. So Sintra will make a short answer, and we have Matthew and remote participation, Carlton, the gentleman here, and Marilia. So let's start Sintra, and then we go to,
Thank you, Rafiq. Sintra, for the record. I just want to go back to Olga's question. I think this is really the crux of this discussion. It's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario. How do we get more developing country representatives participating in IG organization when the fundamental bandwidth and access issues are not solved? You know, at the end of the day, even if we offer remote participation, we're not all starting at the same level. Some participants are at more of an advantage than others. And getting into the door and getting into the room to actually participate, it requires a certain amount of effort in certain regions. And how committed are we to getting there? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sintra. So let's start with the queue. Matthew, please go ahead.
Yes, thanks. Just to build on the comment by Yutsumi, I think it's, to what degree is ICANN actually working with the communities that already exist in the developing world that are closely associated with ICANN? So, for example, the regional internet registry communities, the ISOC communities, and similar communities that through which you may get those individuals from the business community coming in or associating with. There seems to me there's kind of an opportunity to work with those, and maybe you can comment to what degree you do already. Thanks.
We have a question from...
Should I go, or...?
To collect all the questions, then we can respond, so... Yeah.
So this is Carlton Samuels.
Carlton, please, we have remote participation and we go back to you.
Okay, sorry.
Please.
We have a question from CTU Secretariat in Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The question is, one approach to growing and sustaining developing countries' participation in IG is to develop their local capacity, use of and participation in the internet and the internet economy. Can the panel suggest any specific initiative that various stakeholders, governments, private sector, civil society can undertake to achieve this?
Okay, Carlton, please.
Thank you, Rafiq. Carlton Samuels for the record. There are a couple of things. One, the participation, there are a couple of issues that the remote participation is possible, and for the first time at last, we see ICANN making some moves to get remote participation through remote hubs started. So that's a good thing. Sintra already spoke to you about even with remote participation and the hubs, there's a still question of accessibility because of infrastructure concerns. So we have bandwidth concerns, and I'm sure some of you would have noticed that in places where remote participation has occurred before, then some of the remote hubs have gone offline because the bandwidth was just not available for them to interact. So we know that is going to happen. But I want to touch a little bit more on where the real thing happens in the room. The fact is that developing countries are still going to be disadvantaged when being in the room. And that's where all the action really takes place. And you do not underestimate the impact of the corridor engagements as part of the process of meeting consensus and so on. And when you are in a situation where some stakeholders can get in the room and you can see them all the time, they're always in the room, and others are outside of the room, then you begin to understand what the asymmetry impact is. And that is something that we need to take aboard. With respect to sustainable interest and participation in the Internet Governance Forum, the real long-term sustainable interest will come when you have greater participation in the domain name system and the market from the global south. And that is a problem right now. I was in Suriname last month and trying to recruit people to come into the ICANN environment as part of user participation. And I will tell you that of the 30, 40 people who came in the room on 2 separate days, the most insistent questioning came from people who wanted to know, how do we participate in this market? How do we participate as registrars and so on? They want to be a part of the name economy. And I think that augurs good for all of us, because the more of those we can get from the global south involved in the domain name economy, the better it is for us for sustainable participation in the Internet Governance Forum. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlton. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Guo Liang. I'm working for Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. I'm also a MAC member. First, my impression is this panel is about participation IG. It sounds like more like ICANN instead of IG. It seems to me IG is more easier than ICANN. ICANN is more technical driven. This is one thing. Second, that you talk a lot about difficulties, how to participate. But I think the key word for participation is motivation. So the question is, why developing countries have to participate in this IG process? This is one part. Another part is why IG or developed countries want developing country participate. If I know as a multi-stakeholder, if I know there's a stake, right? If I know it's about my interest, you don't have to teach me. I will learn myself, right? So question is two part. Why have to do this? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So I think the question now from Marilia, you want to speak? Marilia, okay. So let's go.
I think she's going to speak. She's waiting for the mic.
Oh. Okay.
It's okay. I can go. Just to complete the idea that you were saying before about the difficulties to participate, it's just a short note, but it occurred to me because it was a barrier that I faced when I started to participate. I think that ICANN and staff have done a lot to make the environment more internationalized. There are efforts in making remote participation and translation available, although it's not available in every room. But I feel that there has been kind of a transference of responsibility from the community to ICANN to pursue inclusion of other actors. And that is very clear in terms of language, for instance. It took me a lot of time to feel confident enough to participate in a panel in ICANN, because my feeling is that non-English speakers, they lose attention on what you're saying. If you seek for words for 5 or 3 seconds, then they will do something else. It's a very hard audience to keep. One time I was sitting through the GNSO and someone was talking an expression that I couldn't understand, and for almost half an hour. And then I lost my patience and I went to someone that was a native English speaker, and the person said, oh, you know what? When someone is playing baseball and you are going to do that with a swing, and I mean, baseball is not like a world sport. So I think that this is very simple, but it's an example of how I think sensitivity is lacking in the community, that this is an international environment, and then you need to perform and to talk in different speed. You need to be more respectful of different people that don't speak English as a first language. So in comparison, this is totally different from the United Nations, for instance, that people are much more aware that the environment is international. So it's just a quick point, but maybe we as a community and ICANN itself can do something to raise sensibility among the people that participate in the community in ICANN.
Okay, we got several questions, so who want to volunteer first to respond? Okay, yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Marilia, for this this comment you made about speaking languages. Sometimes when there are a lot of native speakers speaking English, or whichever language can happen with Spanish or Portuguese, we usually try to use local expressions, and there's an effort that everyone has to do to lower the level of these local expressions and some words that could be understood only by some communities. And I have expressed that many times when I was in the GNSO, because I used to say, if I speak Spanish, for those that have learned Spanish, like I speak with my friends in Buenos Aires, you won't follow me. And that is a problem. I also have to commend ICANN, because many things have changed since I started participating in 2006. It's the translation, as you said, not available everywhere, but it's a main enabling issue. Also the fellowship program, also the efforts that have been made at the regional level with this regional strategy plans. And the thing that I see when I try to capture attention also from other countries in the region, from the government perspective or other participants in other SOs or ACs in ICANN, is why should I go? What's the relevance? And I would take the comment from my colleague from MAG, is if you're interested, you find a way to participate. If you have an interest in the industry, or there is a business that you want to build, or it's an issue that you want to investigate in your university, you find the way to participate. But so the challenge would be to demonstrate to these people that there is value in participating in the process, that there is value for governments to participate in the process of the GAC, or for companies, small and medium enterprises or big companies from Latin America to be part of the business constituency, or civil society organizations to be part of the NCUC or other constituencies. So that's the challenge for us, that we do participate, to show that the value they may find in the participation, because it takes time and it's an effort to do.
Izumi, I very much agree with Olga's point. You need to show value in that you should participate. And I think there's so many issues on the table that's being discussed from so many different perspectives in the ICANN. So if you share everything to everybody, it just confuses people. So you really have to focus your target. So for business people, these are the people, these are the topics that would interest them. For rights protection people, these are the topics, for example, TMCH or other rights protection mechanisms. Those are the things that would interest them. So it's important that we identify and pick the topics that interest different stakeholder groups. And we can do that locally, engage them locally. And regarding Matthew's questions about, so how do we actually do this and engage with the existing communities? I don't have the answers to all the questions or all the economies, but maybe one of the things that the Asia Pacific Hub has done is identified what are the organizations within some of the economies who can do the collaborative kind of role. So in case of Japan, they have picked my organization, JPNIC, and I think some CCTLDs may be able to see the community as a whole and then be able to introduce who are the effective organizations on the business area or from technical area, for example. Or maybe ISOC has so many chapters in each of the economies, so maybe contact ISOC chapters and then consult them. Okay, so who should we talk to if you want to talk to business people in this economy? Who should we talk to if you want to talk to operators within this economy? So make use of communities within those people to consult. And I also very much like the point Marilia raised about language, and I very much agree. It's a lot of pressure speaking in front of so many native English speakers. You feel like you have to speak well to be able for people to listen to you. And then when I attend some of the sessions that focuses on regional development, for example, the regional participation from the Asia Pacific, those sessions, most of the people who are attending the sessions are Asians. And I see quite a lot of people who don't really speak in the main sessions where native English speakers speak, but when we're all Asians, we actually become active. So I think that's one of the signs that people might, if there are environments that encourage just people to speak out more comfortably, maybe it's easier for people to raise voices within the ICANN meetings.
Okay, I'm Ephraim Kenyanito from Kenya. So just to echo whatever they're saying and just to make it short, about such initiatives such as NextGen, that's a really commendable initiative. I'm just going to talk about NextGen and the civil society more engagement. NextGen, we found out that it started in Asia, but now in London it was taken there. Right now they are called for applications for the America meeting. So you find that not just that, but now that even it's the next ICANN is going to Morocco, like these plans to include more, not just developing countries, but also new constituencies such as young people. Then about civil society, we found that at London there was a meeting to encourage civil society, a pre-meeting which Bill Drake and the non-commercial stakeholder group was very instrumental in organizing. So you find that such kind of initiatives, there are initiatives going there, and as they pointed out that it takes time to create change, but the momentum is building up. So yeah, thank you.
We will go with Sintra and we will get question from remote participation. Then I think we need to move to wrap this session. So please, Sintra, go ahead.
Thank you, Rafiq. Sintra Suknanan. I just want to go back to the comment that was made by the remote moderator previously. Most of it was indiscernible on the screens, on the transcripts, so nobody on the panel really got the opportunity to ascertain what was being said or asked or respond effectively to it. And this is one simple but telling example of how remote participation does not work effectively in some areas. There was also the comment made of the topic area not really focusing a little bit too much on ICANN. Right now, ICANN is in a strategic position to make a change and to really help bridge this gap. You know, it's really opening up the GTLD space to increase developing country representation and support, and it is in a position to make strategic decisions that would create more equity within this space. I don't think it's a matter of lack of interest. I'm an attorney at law, and I could tell you, being here on this panel, it's nowhere near to my billable rate, but it's a sacrifice that I make, and many of my colleagues will not do the same. Thank you.
Hello. We have a couple of questions from Ameni Sukosi. The question is, when ICANN plans to invite people from the developing countries, what strategy they make to permit participation of three multi-stakeholder, government, private, and civil society? And the second one, how each of multi-stakeholder representation are selected. Was there a specific process for each stakeholder? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we have, I think, 10 minutes left in this meeting, and I think it's time really to wrap up this session and to go to more actionable recommendations. So what can be done to ensure the participation of developing countries, as again, talking about GNSO case and for the GTLD policy. So I will ask each panelist what he or she think, what kind of recommendation, one or two, really actionable, something concrete, something practical that we can be implemented and share with us. Starting with Bill, maybe? Okay.
I think it should be from both sides, from ICANN and from people. From ICANN, I think it could be, and this could be reviewed at the regional strategies, go to the groups of interest. I think Itsumi made a very good point. For example, go to the lawyers' council or to the small and medium enterprises association. For example, in Argentina, the Internet Association is already participating actively in the GNSO and in other spaces. So that is an example. And they can come and say the activities and share. Some lawyers I know that follow intellectual property issues and are involved, not that much, but maybe they can go to their association or their council and explain which is the value, and maybe they can prepare a small group and they can participate, sometimes one and sometimes the other. The time issue is relevant because going to the meetings sometimes for some of us is part of our work, but for some others it is not, and it takes a lot. It takes many days in a week, so that may be challenging. So if you and an association have 2 or 3 people related with, say, for example, intellectual property issues or business related issues, maybe they can go sometimes one or sometimes other. And from the user perspective or the end participant, maybe us that we know which is the value in the participation, we can share to others and try to motivate them. Thank you.
So I think my suggestion would be something along the lines that Olga has suggested. So first, develop the communities or raise awareness within the local each of the economies first, and then I think once we have more like awareness and active people, then I think those communities can maybe have representatives, the people who would be able to speak on their behalf per different topics. So I think I don't have much more else to add from Olga's point.
Okay. For me, I don't have much to add. I'll just say support the ongoing initiatives. I highlighted ongoing initiatives such as the summer schools, as she pointed out, that Latin America, Africa, and where such initiatives are not going on, to encourage actors to come up with that, and then the internet governance community, ICANN, ISO can collaborate, like work in collaboration with other people. We don't have to take on to solve the whole world's problems, like us only. We need to work with others. Then something else that was important that I think I'd rather touch on during here is on even in the fellowship program, like I followed the fellows who were selected for London meeting, there was issues with visas, so that's something that I think the community can help. For example, like to participate at United Nations events, the United Nations writes to the embassies themselves about these people who are going to come and ask for visas and such kind of things. So I think something that which the community can do, a clear recommendation is in case somebody is selected or for such kind of things, they can support them more. And not only that, about remote hubs, like I followed some of the remote hubs, you find that some of them are located in one town, in one country. If they can assist that these remote hubs are located in different towns so that people don't have even to travel so much. But even the little that has been done, I'd say it's commendable, and we just need to build on that and to ensure more collaboration with ongoing, to build on whatever that is already there. Thank you.
Thank you. Sintra Supnanan. I believe that if the Internet governance organizations want to support developing country engagement, then they need to do a deep dive in assessing why the Internet and the DNS industry has not reached these areas. Specific to ICANN, I think it needs to take a further advantage in leveraging volunteers through its networks, knowledge, and reputation in order to promote its mission and core values and truly bring the DNS industry and the Internet to the developing world. Thank you.
So just before getting to my closing remarks, I wanted to address the question of the remote participant. And if I got it correctly, it was about participation in ICANN, different constituencies from governments, private sector, and so forth. So there are a number of avenues or sort of programs for supporting participation from developing countries. There is the general ICANN fellowship program that follows the criteria of the World Bank in selecting participants from developing and least developed economies, giving also preference to participants coming from non-profit organizations like from government, civil society, academia, and so forth. Details about this program are available on the ICANN website. And then within each constituency, like the Government Advisory Committee, like the constituency or the supporting organization for CCTLDs called CCNSO, like at large, each one has its own program to support participation from developing countries. So that's to answer the question quickly. Now back to what to be done to deal with the issue of participation from developing countries. I guess there are some activities already underway. Again, one of the recommendations that came out of some of the regional strategies was to establish what we call DNS forums. These are forums for discussions around DNS issues. They are being held in the regions. We started with Africa, and then again we had DNS forums in the Middle East and Latin America and in other parts of the world. And these forums particularly target businesses, whether large businesses, whether small businesses, targets existing and potential registries and registrars to discuss issues related to DNS and more to the region that the forum is held within. In addition to that, I just want to note in relation to GNSO that, again, coming from the Middle East, I noticed that the non-commercial constituencies within GNSO have opened a window of opportunity for participation from developing countries. Before that, we used to have constituencies like registry, registrars, business, intellectual property, and in all these constituencies, you would hardly find participation from developing countries, whereas in non-commercial constituencies and stakeholder groups, we noticed and talking about the Middle East, I'm sure in other regions as well, more participation coming from folks who belong to civil society or academia, or even they might belong to some, like they have some sort of small business or small project, and then they also manage to get to or into these processes. So I think that was a positive thing, and we as regional representatives for ICANN, we need to encourage that. We need to strengthen our outreach to the non-commercial stakeholder groups and encourage them to participate in these processes. Thanks.
Thanks, Bear, for this.
Did you want me to say anything?
Oh, I forget you, Bill. Yeah, please. You will have almost the last word. Yeah.
Okay, just wondering. Just to build on the last point, indeed what you've noticed is correct, but Bahir, and the non-commercial users constituency, which I chair, has 350-something members, 90-something organizations, and 200 and whatever the difference is, individuals. And 2/3 of them are from outside the United States. And many of them are from developing countries. The problem is there's a difference between signing up as a member on a mailing list and saying you're part of the group and voting in the election for representatives in the GNSO Council or chair positions and things like that, and actually really deeply engaging. And what we need, I think, really, we spend a lot of time in ICANN talking about outreach to potential new members. We have to find more mechanisms for in-reach to existing members to make the folks that are already interested enough to come into the door but not sure how much they want to commit to engage, to make it more palatable and interesting. Now, one of the real problems is, in my experience, unless you actually really ever come to a meeting and are part of the buzz and see the community working together and all those kinds of things, it's a very abstract thing. So if you're sitting off in some country and just trying to follow remotely, it doesn't give you the same sense of commitment and engagement and so on. So certainly one of the things we can do is try to increase the assistance that we provide to be able to bring people in. And ICANN has a number of mechanisms for this, but more could be done to do that. More generally, the question was asked, by my colleague from the MAG, is this a panel about developing country participation in IG or in ICANN? I think the point is, it's important for us to move from kind of broad generalizations and abstractions to concrete cases. We often talk about internet governance in very sweeping ways. And when we do that, the discussion becomes very repetitious. Developing country participation is important. Everybody cares about it. How can we encourage it? Yes, we need more. But, having that kind of conversation over and over is not so interesting. What I think is more interesting and what we want to do here is to look at it through the lens of a concrete experience. Okay? Now, ICANN provides one particular setting. The GNSO provides an even more specific setting within it. And there are particular challenges in engaging developing country participants in the GNSO and in bringing developing country concerns into the GNSO as a framework or as a consideration where, you would at least kind of tick the box and say, has the policy that we've tried to develop on this issue, whether it's special protections for intergovernmental organizations, or any number of other strange, very specific GNSO kind of policies we've addressed in recent years. Is there a development dimension, an identifiable development dimension, and is so, how have we addressed that? To at least even ask that question, and that's something I think we could do in part by having staff that are attuned to that help to help the community participate, and by having it just be another element in the discourse, in the list of things that we look at when we assess policies. So my point would be, participation is always good to talk about, and there are many things we can do to advance participation further, improve the regional strategies and so on. But I think we also have to think about the issues and how they connect with the actual concerns of people in developing countries, because often we see them as kind of disjoint, and that's a problem. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill, for this intervention. I think we reached the end of this session. thanks to the panelists for the insight they give us today about the GNSO and the ICANN in general, and thanks for the audience for the question and bearing with us till the end. Hopefully we can follow up with this. To get some recommendation, and hopefully we can do more. Thanks. So, bye.